What's up guys, hope you enjoyed that little film I made. My name is Aram and I'm going to walk you through how I color graded that in Dehancer. So I'm going to color these 3 clips, and the first thing I'm going to do is drop this adjustment layer over here. And by the way, just an FYI, I'm no color grading expert. This is all I've learned through watching tutorials and also experimenting. So this is kind of how I do the whole process. So over here, I'm going to go to the colors tab and search for Dehancer. There we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I shoot in my Sony a7 III. So I'm going to choose my camera. I shoot in S-Log2 because the a7 III only shoots 8-bit log footage. There we go. So let's kind of scrub through. First thing I do is I'll go through some of these films and see which one looks good. And I really like the Kodak Vision 3 500T. This has a bit more of a natural look to it, which I really liked. And when I got access to Dehancer, I literally went through every single film profile and I saw how each looked. And I noticed that all of them have one of 5 type of color casts on them. So it's either magenta, gold, black and white, blue, or natural. So I literally went through all of these profiles and I categorized them into what kind of color cast it puts on the profile. I'll put a link down below in the description and you can download it for free. But for our purposes today, we're gonna go with the Kodak Vision 3 500T. So once we have this, I do something a bit unconventional. I haven't seen anyone else do this, but this is just how I operate while color grading. So I'm gonna put another adjustment layer, stretch it out. Let's name this something else. And I'll basically use this as my correction layer. So I'll just call this correction, cut these up, find my scopes, come here to lumetri color, and I'll just bring that contrast back a little bit. There we go. See, that's looking a lot better. It's the before and the after. Kind of like that contrast. I'll do the same thing here. You can see this one is, the shadows are not prominent at all. So I'll just bring these back. This is much better. Lastly on this one, there you go. Before and after, much better. We have much more contrast, which I like. Maybe take off the contrast on this one a little bit. Now back to Dehancer. By the way, the Dehancer plugin has a lot of different features, and I don't use all of them. I'll show you which ones I use. So after this, I'm going to go to the film developer, and over here what I like to do is I just like to boost the contrast a bit more, and then I like to bump the color saturation a little bit. There we go. Some people might say this is a bit too saturated, but honestly I kind of like it. The greens are really popping here. You can see there's some grain happening here, so I'm just going to go ahead and disable that. That's right. Also, when you put in Dehancer in the beginning, grain is always on, so just turn it off when you start. And over here we also have gamma correction and color separation. I personally don't touch these, so I'm just going to move on from here. So film compression, this is quite interesting. It's basically how the highlights and the midtones interact with each other. You can control parts of your clips that are getting overexposed and bring those down. It's pretty cool in managing those particular areas. Dehancer has a video that explains how you can use film compression, so I'll link that down below. That's where I learned this part from. I think I'm gonna go back and boost the contrast up a little bit more and bring that saturation up just a tiny bit. Okay, this is looking pretty good so far. Okay, so now with the film compression. So with the film compression, if parts of my clips are slightly overexposed, then I play around with it. But for this, I don't see a need for it right now, so I'm gonna lay off on film compression. The next thing I look at is print. So Dehancer has some very popular prints over here. So there's 5 of these over here, so I just start playing around with it, see what looks good. Okay, it's certainly not this. Okay, this one looks pretty good. The Kodak Endura glossy paper. I like this. After that, in your color head, you can adjust the colors in case your white balance is off. I'm quite happy with the white balance, so I don't see a need for it right now. Also, from what I realized is that if you shoot your footage well, like if you have everything exposed, your composition's all good, it makes your color grading job so much easier. So when you're going out there, before you think about your post, your production, if that is set, then life over here is so much easier. So you can see that there's quite a few more features down here, but I only like to do 3 things from here. I like to add some grain, and for grain I suggest you keep it minimal. So I use this preset, which is the 65mm ISO 50. It just adds a slight grain. You can see there's a little bit of grain, and I think this is perfect. Like if you put the 8mm 500, that's not good. So back to the 65. Halation as well, I keep it quite minimal. Halation is where you have a red cast on the highlights, so you can see. So I'll turn halation off, it's gone. I'll turn halation on, it's back, the red cast. Okay, and lastly for bloom, if you turn this on, see it adds like a blurry effect and it's quite strong, so I'll keep it at 35, which is much more subtle and I like it that way. Another thing that I like to do to make the scenes match a bit more is I like to individually correct the Dehancer layer a bit more. So you can see that the first clip is a bit more overexposed than the second and third. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna chop this up. By the way, this is not best practices, but I'm just gonna chop this up here, come under input and just decrease the exposure a little bit. I'm gonna bring down the contrast a bit more. There, a lot better. And the reason why I chop it up is because when I'm making these adjustments, it does not affect this one over here. For example, over here, I'd want a bit more saturation and a bit more contrast. A bit more contrast and a bit more saturation. There, now we're getting a bit of a dreamy feel to it. That's quite beautiful. And lastly, on this one, you can see this couple is doing a little dance rehearsal over here. Boost up the contrast a bit more, bump the saturation a bit more, and there you go. That's pretty much all I do. If you look at the 80-20 rule, you get 80% results from 20% of the features. Full disclosure, I got in touch with the Dehancer team and they were very kind to offer me free access to their product. In exchange, I make a video for them giving my honest review, so they had no input in this video at all. So all in all, I actually really enjoyed using Dehancer. The only thing I would say is it's quite heavy on your computer. I have a really amped up Mac. It has 36 gigs of RAM. It has the latest Apple silicone, so it can handle it quite well. But if you don't have a computer that has a lot of compute power, then it will be quite aggressive. Your computer might start slowing down, so that's the only thing. But other than that, Dehancer is super easy to use and I really enjoyed it. Also, if you use my code down below, you can get 10% off on your Dehancer purchase, so check it out. And yeah, I hope you learned something from this video. Thanks for stopping by.